Hello, everybody. We're so glad you're here, and we're hoping you're enjoying your lunch. We figured this was a very good thing for you to find out about. Interesting thing was, before I left home to come here, what did I get was a spam call. So I'm waiting to hear from the experts if I handled it right. Hopefully I did. But it's not surprising. Every 2 seconds, a con man in this country steals somebody's identity. Last year, Americans lost $18 billion of their hard-earned money to fraud, identity theft, and scams. What tricks are they going to pull on us next? Every time we think we have them one conquered, they come up with something different and new. So we want to have you understand from these experts what you can do to protect yourself. Our first speaker is from Investigator from the Iowa State Attorney General's office. I think it's interesting in talking to him that Stephen Switzer was with the Coralville, Iowa City Police Department, till 1989. And then he went to work for the Attorney General's office. So we're not bringing a foreigner in here, we're just making a pass. So Steve, come up and tell us exactly what we should expect.
Morning, everybody. Is it afternoon yet? No? Okay. It'll seem like afternoon by the time I'm done. I'm a little trapped here today. Normally I wander around and talk to the crowd, but apparently we're being recorded for television, so I'm going to be more like a talking head. But that doesn't mean I don't want to hear your story or your comment. A lot of what I'm going to talk about is essentially a highlights tour of the world of scams. And if someone's got something they want to say in the way of an illustration or a question, just feel free to jump in because I like to have this mixed up a little bit. So just a little bit about me so you've got some context. Indeed, I am from Iowa City, born and raised here. Went to City High, had a friend that got interested in law enforcement, and he got another friend interested in law enforcement. Pretty soon I was sucked into it, and I've been at it for a third of a century now. There you go, Barry. Third of a century. He's got me beat, though. And for the last 25 years, I've been with the Attorney General's office investigating, for the most part, consumer fraud. So I've seen it all, but every time I turn around, there's something new. So we're going to give a little highlights tour of the sorts of scams that are out there. We're going to look at our website. I'll take you to a couple of other websites I want you to be aware of. Some of what I say will be reinforced through the other speakers, and that's because we're all in the same business. We overlap quite a bit, and we're all trying to protect you, protect us, so that you don't have to call us later to help you out. So we're basically arming you with information so you can defend yourself better. So, highlights tour. Who uses Craigslist? Bunches of us, right? Who's bought something on Craigslist? Who's sold on Craigslist? Who sold on Craigslist and got a really snarky, scammy, smelly email from someone who wants to buy it with a check that's way larger than the item? So if I list a used car there, and I've got a $2,000 used car, and I get an email from someone, and we start talking business, and foreshortening the story considerably, they send me a $5,000 check. Well, why did they do that? Because they're going to steal your money, right? They're going to have a story about, oh, I sent this money. I thought you meant $2,000 or $5,000. I sent this $5,000 check. Go ahead and deposit that and wire me the $3,000 back. All right, well, that's simplified a little bit, but the check you got is a counterfeit check. It might look real because it got printed on real check paper with real check writing software, with a real account and a real routing number, but somebody stole it, basically. And so by the time that check gets through the banking system, 10 days to 2 weeks, you've sent your good money off, and then you are liable for the deficiency in your account because your account agreement with the bank said you are. And where's the scammer? Well, nobody knows. Just recently, PC World, I think it was a September article, said that something like 80%, maybe even 90% of the scammers on Craigslist are from 5 gangs in Nigeria. We were talking about Nigeria earlier, Barry and I, Chief Bedford, and we used to know it as the Nigerian scam. Well, it's much larger than that now, and the Nigerians have moved on to high technology. But the largest percentage of the scamming on Craigslist is operated by 5 gangs in Nigeria. A couple of guys figured it out, and they said, hey, come here, let's do this. These Americans, they just give you money. And we do. We just give them money. About 20% of us just give them our money because we trust. We trust. We Iowans, we're really nice. We always want to be nice. Oh, sure, come on over. We always want to say, sure, I trust you. Okay, trust but verify. On Craigslist, where are they? You don't know until you've met them, if you ever meet them. One of the things I do to illustrate this is I buy cheap old guitars, $200 or $300 here and there, because I like fiddling with guitars. I'm no good at it, but I like to do it. So there's always somebody buying and selling guitars or cars or artwork or furniture or whatnot. But I don't buy a guitar from anybody I can't go talk to. And I don't go to their house. They don't come to my house. We find a public meeting place and I take somebody with me. And that way I can be reasonably assured that nothing bad is going to happen. But there's no guarantees, none, no guarantees. I want to pick on the AARP just a minute, segue. This book says scam-proof your life. Well, there's nothing that's waterproof ever. It's water resistant to maybe 1,000 feet, but it will leak. This will help. Chief Bedford and I looked through this, and it looks like there's a whole lot of good information. None of us are going to sit down and read this cover to cover, I bet. Probably use it as an encyclopedia, but we see some good information in here, but it's not scam-proof. There are no guarantees. Trust me. Who's on eBay? Yes, ma'am.
I'm not on eBay, but I watch those court TV shows. And you'd be surprised the number of those shows that end up with, I went on Craigslist and I bought it here. It was delivered and now it doesn't work. So unless you want to get to be a star on TV, I hope you can't go purchase anything for myself.
She was talking about the court TV shows, folks that sue a seller for selling something on Craigslist that doesn't work, represented as working, and indeed it turned out not to work. Well, that's unfortunately common across the board, whether it's Craigslist or whether it's a want ad or whether it's a garage sale. It's gotten so that even at a garage sale, you have to put up signs to defend yourself a little bit that says, as is, no guarantees. I don't know if it works or not, but there's a plug. Have a nice day. Because people will sue you for whatever reason. I get asked, we're going to touch on it just a moment, then I'll move along. I get asked a lot, well, can they sue me for that? Well, the response is yes, anybody can sue anybody for anything, right, wrong, or otherwise. That's why our courts are so full. So there's a lot of really good things that have merit, but there's a lot of really bad things that don't have merit. So yes, you just need to be careful. It's never proof. eBay is much the same as Craigslist. Trust but verify, trust but verify. The beauty of eBay is you can buy things from all over the world. The bane of eBay is you can buy things from all over the world. You can't verify it until it's on your doorstep. And you have the same sorts of issues that she mentioned, quality, condition, does it work, does it not work, et cetera, et cetera. But the same scams are there. The counterfeit check, There are dummy PayPal accounts out there. They look like PayPal, but they're not PayPal. They have the PayPal logo. They have all the PayPal verbiage. When you look at the website, it says paypal.com. But if you really look at the website, it doesn't say paypal.com. It says paypal.com blah, 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 dot something else. So you can incorporate a legitimate URL, the address, into another web address to make it look like, because most of us aren't going to read the whole thing. We're going to see, oh, PayPal, we're cool, it's good. And it's been set up by one of those Nigerian scammers or somewhere else. Eastern Europe, I traced one time. Where did that start? It started here, went to Florida, and then it skipped to Europe, and then it skipped to the Philippines, and then it disappeared in the Canary Islands. I was able to trace this one because it was poorly done. The scammers usually, you can't trace them. That's just that simple. Who has email? Oh, ma'am?
Yeah, I was going to say my email. Almost every other day I get something from somebody wanting to give me money. And I won the big lotto, and, they're talking about pounds,
Right.
And
So when you get a scam email, what do you do with it?
I delete it.
Good for you.
If anybody's trying to give me anything for free, I delete it. I figure that, there's an old saying that you don't get anything for nothing.
Yep, and if it's too good to be true, it probably is, right?
Yeah.
Sir?
I also get phone calls all the time.
Oh, yes.
I get phone calls. The latest one is, that I've been getting this last 2 weeks, it's from Florida, and my phone says it's from Florida. And, but the number's unlisted, and I answer the phone, and it says, Grandma.
We're going to talk about that.
I've never had any children.
Some of us who had have regretted that.
He says, but I'm your nephew, I'm your oldest nephew. So what I say is, well, just give me your name, your first and last name. And I usually hear a damn when they hung up.
Yeah. Sir.
I was getting, before that, a couple months ago, I was getting a phone call that would start with, this call is from the United States. I'm calling from the U.S. government. We have grant money that you need, that we need to send you.
Gosh, she could do this for me. You're getting them all.
Of course, the number was unlisted,
Mm-hmm.
And if you live in the United States, that first of all, the government doesn't give anything out for free hardly.
No, they don't.
There's at least 3 or 4 copies of
Right.
on the side.
Right. Sir, you had a thought.
I was gonna say, yes, I delete them, which didn't seem to do much good, so then I started blocking them,
Uh-huh.
which slowed them down a little bit, but then they changed their, and then I discovered well, you need to block the URL address, is it the one after the ampersand?
Right.
So I
It's,
blocked
well,
the thing, and then I blocked that, and it's still,
they will sneak through. We're talking about email, how you deal with scam emails. One way is to simply delete. Another way is when you see one, you recognize it, you can block it. And each email provider has an algorithm for that, and it's a learning algorithm. So each time you mark one as spam, the algorithm updates itself across all the thousands and millions of users, so it's constantly learning what's spam and what's not. So it's really important. It helps the whole global community if you find it to be spam, that you mark it spam. But there's one other thing I'd like you to consider doing when you get an email, is to forward it to the Federal Trade Commission. And they have an email repository that you can use. You just simply forward the email. You don't have to do anything but forward it. You don't have to change a subject line. You don't have to say, "Dear government official, here's a spam email." You just simply forward it. Don't click on anything in the email, because that's where you run into trouble. We'll talk about that. But if you simply want to forward it to the Federal Trade Commission so that they can use it, because they're the ones that have the big guns, Then delete it from your inbox and mark it spam. So let me give you this email address, and I'll say it a couple of times. spam@uce.gov. Spam, like the canned meat, at uce.gov. Now, UCE, what is that? It's government speak. It's, let me get this right. Commercial, let's see, unsolicited commercial email. The feds thought that one up. They could have easily done spam at spam.gov, but no, they did spam at uce.gov. So if you get a spam email, forward it to the Federal Trade Commission. They use those to prioritize for investigations, and they do use them. Spam at uce.gov, mark it as spam, and then delete it. If when you mark it as spam, it doesn't automatically delete. I've got one email, when I mark it spam, it disappears on me. And that way you're going to overall reduce the amount of spam you get. Consider using a couple of different email addresses. Who has one for family and maybe one for commercial? A few of us? I do that. I've got one for family, and I hardly get any spam on that one. And I've got one that I use for contacts with maybe a second circle of friends and businesses, and I get tons and tons and tons and tons of spam on that one. And so I'm really busy on that one. So consider that too. Use one that's reasonably safe. It's no guarantee. Hold that thought. No guarantee, but that will help as well. Ma'am?
Sometimes I get emails and all it has is somebody's name, please contact me. So I will always be taught never to open. And if you don't know what it is, don't open any attachments.
That's right.
So I've never opened them, but those are also spam.
Well, here's the thing. At some point, sometimes the spam might be a legitimate, whatever that means, email. It might really be from a family or a friend that really does need something. But, you know, then you have to start being your own little algorithm. You have to look at the language. Does it sound like them? And did I know they were going to be in Ireland? Or something like that. You have to think it through rather than going, oh, click. Because you're right, you don't want to click on the link in the email. And you don't want to click on the picture in the email. Because when you click on the link in the email, that's where you launch the malicious software. When you click on the photo to see it, that's where you launch the malicious software. Malicious software can be encoded in a photograph now in what are called pixels, the little pixels that make up the whole photo. It can be embedded in the photo. So if you click it, who knows what you're going to launch. So while you're doing your email and you're on your computer, who is constantly updating their virus software? A few of us. Who has a firewall? A few of us. Who doesn't know? A few of us. If you don't have malicious software, viral software, virus software protection, and a firewall, or if you don't know whether you do, get it now. There are several good companies out there that do this, and for a few dollars, you'll get 2 or 3 years worth of protection. I've got one that I use with an annual, and it reminds me, it gives me a countdown, and I update. It automatically updates me, and it keeps me smart. It makes me look pretty darn good, and I don't see so much anymore. Sir?
I comment, there's also 3 applications, not that's a little dangerous, because you're maybe contacting a spam person, but somebody, if you just know somebody in technology, they will check it to see it is a legitimate program. They do have 3 downloads of firewalls and antivirus programs.
That's right. There are some free antivirus software and free firewalls out there. Some of them are good, some of them are not good, some of them are really dangerous. So again, when you're on the internet, you trust but you verify. Some companies will have at a basic level that's free, but if you want the enhanced real-time protection, as soon as you turn your computer on, it comes on so you don't have to think about turning the light on and off like your dad told you to do when you left the room. You just set it so it's automatic. And that's what will cost you some money, the really good stuff, unfortunately. But it's worth it. Ma'am?
I have my computer, I have a tower at home and I have that all protected.
Mm-hmm.
But I also get my emails and get on the internet on my smartphone.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's protected or not.
Well, if
Droid?
to an extent it is. Google, for example, is one of many companies that if you're on a Droid phone, they've got some level of protection built into the Droid software. But you can buy, when you buy your software for your computer, a lot of them will have a suite of services and will let you have more than one device. The company that I bought, my laptop is covered, my wife's laptop is covered, my cell phone is covered, her cell phone is covered. In this company, you can add up to 5 devices. Many of them are the same now. You simply pay for it through one and then use the code and download it to everything else. Now, I have a smartphone, and it's smarter than me. The only reason I have a smartphone is because we became grandparents a year ago last June, and my wife said, we need that for the videos. I said, what's wrong with my flip phone? She said, we need that for the videos. Okay. So it's smarter than me. There's a lot more on that phone than I'm ever going to use. So I don't spend much time cruising on the internet. Besides, I get this little teeny screen out, and then I got to take my bifocals off, and there's no point in that. Ma'am?
So is Norton not a good one? You're saying that you need something that does drive?
Oh, I'm not going to say what companies are good or bad.
No, but I mean,
I'm going to say instead that there are many good companies out there, and you need to do your research really as to which one you think is best suited to you. Well, it's like buying, do you want to buy a Chevy or do you want to buy a Toyota? They all do what they're supposed to do, drive, steer, stop, but it's the details that might matter to you. So you need to research that like you do a used car or a dishwasher.
so you need a private protection and a firewall?
Yes. And in some cases, you might want 2 different kinds of antivirus software. It depends on what that product will do and what are you seeing. It's like wearing a couple of extra layers of clothing when you go out in the cold. 1 layer might do it, 2 layers might be better, maybe. Ma'am?
So what do you recommend for people that aren't really technologically savvy then? Obviously, you can't recommend any particular products, but is there a place that you can direct people for assistance with that process if they themselves don't have the technology understanding or capability?
Sure. She was asking about what if you're not technologically savvy and you want to become current on these things. Well, there's a ton of companies out there, big and small, that if you throw money at them, will set you up. There's lots of individuals out there that run tech companies that are more than happy to serve the residential customer. There's lots of big boxes that do the same thing. There's a company out there that has a regular squad of people that go around. And
I wasn't trying to get you to.
no.
I was concerned that there may be a lot of people in the older population that really would feel that they don't have the skills to do the kind of assessment you were.
Well,
That's the concern.
truth of the matter is, even those of us that are technically adept are still jumping through hoops on a daily basis to find out what's going on out there. So it depends on how sophisticated you want to be. But there are good companies out there that automate the antivirus and the firewall. It runs in the background. And once you're set up, you don't have to pay attention to it. So those are the kinds of things you want to do. Even the technologically savvy don't want to be messing with it every day. So you run it in the background. The kinds of things you're going to see by email, some of you mentioned this, there's lottery and sweepstakes scams. Oh, and you get those by phone too, right? Yep. Work at home scams, and you get those by phone, and you get those by Craigslist.
They got me.
Did they? Yeah.
Well, I got them too. They're out of business now.
Okay.
'Cause I sent my, their scam was that they were sell the, when you use your credit card, there's a fee to the credit card companies. Credit card companies pay, and they wanted me to do that. Well, there's no, it's virtually impossible to do that. And so, when I paid them $500 to do this from home, I didn't know that. But when I paid them with Citibank card. So I told Citibank what they did to me. Citibank said they will take care of it.
And now you know that if they want money from you first, that's a bad thing, right? If they want your money first, that's a hallmark of high likelihood, not a guarantee, because there's nothing that's proof. It's not a guarantee that it's a scam, but it's a high likelihood. If they're wanting money up front, it's going to be a scam. That's one of the big hallmarks. If they want money up front, I don't care what it's for. If they want money up front, it's a scam.
Yeah, Citibank gave me my money back.
Right.
All of it.
Okay. Who's been on a fraudulent website? Is it obvious to you? Do you get any kind of warnings? You don't, do you? You don't know until it's too late. Unless it happens to be a website that one of the security softwares that you've recently installed marks it as such. Occasionally I also like old cars, so I'm on old car websites a lot. And occasionally I'll go to a link and the website will start to load, but then my antivirus software pops up and blocks me. Because if I download that website to look at that 1958 Ford, I'm going to be downloading malicious software. So it blocked me from doing that. That's not always going to happen. There are websites, completely legitimate websites, that get an overlay. So if you go to that, you get a redirect, and you don't know it until you're on the redirected website. Who has gone to a website and they've seen an FBI bureau badge pop up and say, "You are in trouble," or words to that effect? "You've just gone to an illegal website. Now you owe us $300. Anyone seen that one? You've seen it, right? It's real, isn't it? And you can be going to a completely legitimate website, and these pop-ups will occur. Who has a pop-up blocker on? Who knows what a pop-up blocker is? Who doesn't know? Okay, when you go to a website and you see other websites jump up in front of you, that's called a pop-up. Your browser will allow you to block pop-ups. And pop-ups are another place where scam can start. So when you go to your preferences, when you set up your browser, if you're not comfortable with this, going through the options, there's a menu bar at the top, and you click on options, you can go to that, and you can click affirmatively your pop-up blocker so you don't get pop-ups, because that's another scam delivery system. It's also a legitimate advertising avenue, but it's also a way to deliver scams. There's all kinds of ways to deliver scams. Sir?
This is all great. It's protecting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But also businesses change their philosophy or their procedures, and all of a sudden, you can't get into their website. I just happen to have my online banking not recognize my browser without telling me. And all of a sudden, I didn't have online banking or any contact with my bank. And I called the bank to find out what's happening here. And they told me, well, we no longer recognize that browser. So I had to change my browser. And so I'm saying that you got both ends here,
That's true.
working against.
That's
You
true.
don't know where you're at, really. And so to depend upon your computer, just don't. No way. For anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't, because if somebody gets me a telemarketing call, I'll just say, call me back, or I'll call you back, give me a number, I'll call you back.
And we're going to get to the phones, but indeed, you're right about the browsers. There are a number of browsers out there competing for your browser business. There's good old Internet Explorer, yeah. And there's Firefox, and there's a Firefox Lite called Pale Moon. There's Chrome, there's Bing, and there's a few others out there that nobody really knows about because they have a really small market share. But to your point, that a website business may not recognize your browser or may not respond correctly. I just last week switched from one browser to another because a news website I spend a lot of time on to keep me current on what's going on out there didn't respond well with the browser that I'd been using for several years. They had made some sort of change in their own programming, and it didn't respond well anymore. And because I used that news website so much, I thought, well, I could have two browsers up, or I dump the one and go back over to another one where everything responded well. So that also is consideration. There are so many moving parts, you really got to stay on top of it. But ultimately, the overarching point I want to leave us all with is virus software, antivirus software, and firewall. That's the most important mechanical part of your computer at this point. I saw another handout here somewhere. Ma'am.
That brings up a point. How safe is it actually to bank online? How easy is it for a scammer to get into your account?
Yeah, how safe is it to bank online? Virtually safe, because there are millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people banking all at the same time. The odds that they're going to get your account are pretty slim. On the other hand, it's not proof. All of the technology is resistant, but you do have to verify. Again, you want to make sure if you're going to the University of Iowa Credit Union's website, be sure that that's the website address you see up there. Check your lower right-hand corner. Do you see the padlock? Is it locked or is it unlocked? Is your verification process always the same? I've got a financial institution that I bank with in Des Moines that every time I go online, I have to go through 4 hoops to get to my account information. And one of those hoops changes within a series of answers. And so that's one of the things they're doing is creating a lot of hoops. And those hoops are there because it helps their computers differentiate between us slow human beings and the fast algorithm computers that are just running through combinations. So it's reasonably safe. It's not 100%. And when we used to check our statement once a month, when we got the paper statement to see if reconcile, we all still reconcile our accounts, I hope. Because that's where electronically the scams are coming in. Because now you can check your account as many times a day as you've got time for. Well, I don't have time to check it every day, or I don't make time to check it every day. But a scammer can slip what's called a site draft electronically to your bank. And because your account agreement says, if presented, we'll honor it, it's incumbent upon you to keep track of what's going on in your account so you can flag it, so you can tell your bank, hey, I didn't authorize that, and they can try to reverse it. Sir?
What's the risk difference between accessing your bank at home on your own machine versus Wi-Fi in public places?
Oh, never Wi-Fi in public places. Never, 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 never. Never, 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 never. Even if it's supposedly secure, it's the least secure way to communicate by computer because it's out there in the open to be gathered up. And there are all kinds of ways to scoop up that information. If I go to a place that's got free Wi-Fi, like the library here's got free Wi-Fi, the only thing I'm doing is cruising news sites or things that are public websites that I don't have to do any logins on. It might be, I might have my computer secure, the library might have their computer secure, but that signal has to go through several servers because the signal breaks up and then reassembles. And so it's going through any number of whatever open servers are available, and that's where the bad guys can snatch it. Somebody can be sitting right next to you, and they may have the receiver technology to harvest it just as though they were in your computer. Ma'am?
Are you saying don't use Wi-Fi at all, or just don't use it for online banking?
I would say anytime you have to log into something and you're doing it by Wi-Fi, I wouldn't do it.
The regular email would not.
Yeah, well, see, you're logging into something.
Okay.
You know, there are different levels of security and there are different levels of trust. I was born pretty cynical, pretty skeptical. It didn't help any. I've been in law enforcement a really long time. I don't trust much anything, and least of all technology. And I've had enough trouble with it over the years where you just really need to be careful, and you think careful. Do you leave your house unlocked when you go away? Don't unlock an account when you're away. Ma'am?
Is there a difference between online banking on your home desktop and your phone?
Well, are you doing it wirelessly?
At home?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe if someone happens to get lucky. I've got my computer, my laptop at home is hardwired. I plug the wire in. I could do it wireless.
I am wired in.
Okay, well, if you're wired in, you're probably going wired in unless you've selected wireless. So you want to find out whether you've selected wireless or not. But really, you know, wireless is reasonably secure. On the other hand, that's an unlocked door, basically. Ma'am?
I may get in trouble, but I've been deleting some emails that come to me that say you are notified to appear in court.
No, that's another scam. That's under that umbrella of spam scam. No government agency is going to tell you that you need to appear in court by email, whether it's as a subpoena or there is a variant on the theme. There's the jury duty scam that comes by email also. But really, don't really think really narrowly here about what kind of scam might come by email or telephone. Any kind of scam might come by email or telephone. So you got to really think globally because the bad guys are thinking way faster than us because they're sitting around all day thinking just that. Sir?
One of the scams that's going on right now is the calling your home phone, we have a landline, and telling you that you're being sued by the IRS and to call this number. What happens when you call that number?
You're going to lose money. He's talking about what we know generally as the IRS scam. It's sort of one of the current telephone scams right now. We're talking to lots and lots of people about that who are calling us to tell us about it. And a lot of us, the calls we're getting they're just simply telling us about it. A lot of them are folks saying, "Is this for real?" And again, we say, no, if it's not for real. The federal government, the county government, the state government, the city government, if they're going to contact you, it's going to come by good old paper. So far. Ma'am?
I keep getting these calls, well, there's calls that have unidentified numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's this card holder services call from
Yeah.
several different numbers.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm on the do not call list.
Oh, they don't care. They don't care. I'm on the do not call list also. They don't care. Well, here's the deal. There's an old saw in law enforcement that locks only keep honest people out. To an extent, that's true. Bad guys don't care. So legitimate businesses sign up to get updates from the Federal Trade Commission on who's on the do not call list. The bad guys, they're just going to call you. They're just going to call you. The cardholder services one, the Federal Trade Commission has actually been able to take some action against some of the people involved in the cardholder services. That's a very generic term involving a lot of people. In fact, let's just go to the Federal Trade Commission's website because we haven't got to mine yet.
Where is it? There it is.
See how easy that was? federaltradecommission.gov, ftc.gov. Who's been to ftc.gov? Anybody? A couple of us? You don't count. You're in law enforcement. He's supposed to know. Has anyone else gone out there? Nope, couple people? Well, do you see? Oh, look at this. Huh. Okay, we're a little out of date. So, see here we've got different places you can go, tips and advice. They've just redone their website, so I'm still learning it. But they're real proud of their 100 years, and they should be. They've done some really serious work for us, and most of us don't ever know about it. But let's take a quick tour so you can see a little bit of this, because you can get a ton of information from the Federal Trade Commission, and they're the folks that enforce the do not call list. So even though the bad guys don't care, you should make the report to the Federal Trade Commission. Let's take a quick tour. Scam alerts. If you just go tips and advice and work your way down to this, you can work your way through a pot of coffee catching up to speed, and it's way quicker than the book. Who's got the tech support scam call? I'm from Microsoft. I'm here to help. Right? So you got one of those calls. What happened when you got the call?
Kept getting it, and they kept saying he had a virus on his computer. He said, well, what computer? You're calling a work phone number. Give me a number. And they said, oh, and they hung up and they said, we'll get back to you. So they kept calling him and calling him, kept trying to get him, well, your personal computer, your personal computer. And he came home and started, and he said, that's a scam, honey. I'm sure it's a scam. So they made the mistake of calling him because he worked real late, and he was at home when they called him on the cell. I said, give me that phone. And he said, you know that this is illegal. Click. No more phone calls.
Yeah. Well, the tech support scam has become really common also, like the IRS scam. You've got some malicious software on your computer. We'd like to help you get it off.
I called thinking I was going to Microsoft, but this site emulated it.
Mm-hmm.
And diagnosed these problems on my computer. I said, oh, we can fix this in $199 over the next 2 years. About 3 or 4 days go by, and the same thing comes up again. So I called another source, and they started in the same thing, and said, let me get back to you. Realized they put it on there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went back to the first one. I said, you scammed me. I'm canceling the payment on the credit card. And they said, oh, you can't do that. And I said, well, watch me do that.
There you go.
Who puts the boss on who gave up very quickly. I figured he just decided to move on and scam somebody else.
Right. What he was describing, the computer tech support scam, you will either go to a website that looks like your support website because they'll embed that keyword again into the website description that you see, or you'll get a phone call and they'll say, hi, you've downloaded some bad software, some malicious software, whatever terms they want to use. We want to help you get it off. Can you give us access to your computer? And you can say no and no, or you can go, sure. Well, there's your mistake. If you give them access to your computer, you didn't have malicious software on your computer until you gave them access to your computer. So it becomes circular. They're going to harvest your money out of your account and any other information you've got on your computer while they provide you this support. And they screw your computer up so badly that you may wind up needing to take it to one of those tech groups to have it cleaned up, to have your whole operating system and all of your files reinstalled. Now, who has backups on their computer? Yeah, okay, good. Always have a clean backup. You should always have a clean backup. Ma'am?
Reminds me of another question, because when I've gone to one of these box stores and you talk about, hey, on my own machine, and yet everything now is going to the cloud.
Not everything, I'm not.
Well, no, but you know what I'm saying.
Right.
So, you know, how does one assess something like a product such as carbonite or any other product that's being put forth for the
Okay.
purpose of backing up your personal data? Because it certainly would be a lot easier not to have to manage that oneself.
Right.
You know,
So she was asking about backup services as opposed to just doing your own backup. There are companies out there that have backup service in the cloud. Well, that's wireless, and it's out there for other people to poke around in the file drawers that you think are locked. I'm no fan of cloud. I have a backup at home on a separate external hard drive, and that separate external hard drive came with its own automatic backup software. And so whatever I do on my primary drive is mirrored on my backup drive. And I set it up, it did it automatically. I could do it the hard way because I know how to do it that way, but this one just said push this button. And so I've got parallel memory in an external hard drive.
the concern I have of what you're describing, presumably then your external drive is connected at all times.
Right. I have an external hard drive that has a USB cable, so it's hardwired to my laptop.
And I've always been concerned about having my backup files physically in the same location as my because if you have a fire, or if you have,
Yeah,
one of the things they do in business is they always talk about having remote,
right.
there's a way to protect.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking about proof versus resistance. Nothing's 100%. I don't think I'm ever going to have a fire. If I ever have a fire, anything I've got on my hard drive, I'm not going to go, oh my God, it's the only thing I ever had. I like my photos as much as anybody, but if all my photos go up in a fire and I save my dog, I'm okay with that. So I have an external hard drive, hardwired to my laptop with automatic mirror backup. The other thing that I like about an external hard drive is that you can separate your sensitive information on your computer so that if you decide you're going to go out and cruise the internet and you've got all your banking information on you can set it up so it's on your other external hard drive, not on the hard drive in the computer. You unplug that external hard drive so that if something bad happens to your computer, the hard drive in your computer, you've still got your hard drive safe and none of that information was compromised, as long as you're not writing it to both drives. So again, you need to be a little tech savvy or know somebody who is in order to make sure all that routes to the other place and not on that computer. It's one extra step. A terabyte now is way under $100. And I'll never fill a terabyte with thousands and thousands and thousands of photos. I'm trying, but I'm never going to do it. Ma'am?
When you back up, if you have malware or bad things on there, viruses, doesn't it just go right to their backup too?
Well, that's why you have antivirus software and firewall, because it's supposed to catch all of that. Again, nothing's 100%. There's nothing as proof, but you just create a really high wall here. That's why it's called a wall, firewall. So you do want to be careful, but it's part of the process. Telephones. Someone mentioned grandparent scam. How many of us have gotten a grandparent scam call? A few of us? A few of us. You know why those of us that got those calls got them? Who's home during the day, during the week? Right? Because here's the deal. The scammers are in Florida and Texas and California, and they want to go golfing in the afternoon. So they're going to make the call in the morning when we're around. And they're just running phone numbers. They didn't get your number. They're going 319-338-5729, 5730, 5731 until someone answers the phone. Hello? Grandma? Billy? Yeah, it's Billy. That's how they get the name. That's almost always how they get the name. Because you think that it's your grandson who always calls you or calls you every few months, and why does that voice sound a little different? Well, I've got a cold, Grandma. Or something like that. And then they start playing you like a fiddle because grandparents are really all about making sure their grandkids are safe, right? Sometimes more so than the parents, right? Because we've been through that, and now we're worried about our grandparents. So they're going to play our emotions like a fiddle, like a piano. They're going to start out with something really reasonable and get us caught up in, oh, we don't want you in jail. Let me wire the money. And that's what they're counting on. They're going to play the emotion. They're doing this just on a skit for them. It's a skit. It's a play. Boom, 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 boom. They sweep you up in the emotion, and pretty soon you're wiring money off from Walmart. What else comes by phone? We talked about the IRS scam. We talked about the jury scam. Anybody else have another one? You?
I just started working for H&R Block, and there's an H&R Block scam.
Oh, yes. There's all kinds of scams. Remember, global. If they can say it, it's a scam.
If you ever get a H&R Block scan, you can only just call your H&R Block office and they will confirm, they're not gonna ask you for information over the phone.
I've got a couple of things I'm going to start to wrap up, but I want everyone to keep contributing. I saw a hand over here.
I just wanted to know, you had that screen, the first screen you had up there, the Attorney General about the
Yeah, we're going to go back to that.
checks, and I came a little late. Is that a scam or is that real? I'm really not sure. I've got the check sitting there, I'm like, I don't know.
Did you bring it with? You can sign it over. Because it's real. It's a real check. Yeah, it's a real check.
It looks real.
Yeah, some of you may have seen them. It says State of Iowa warrant across the top of it. And that's what the state of Iowa calls a check. It's kind of like unsolicited commercial email, right? It's government talk. But one of the investigations that we did resulted in the recovery of millions of dollars from people who'd been scammed by these companies. And they were required to pay it over to us so we could then pay it back out to the people they scammed it from. And it was something that was on your credit card, a small thing that most people didn't notice. And so that's what they were counting on. And we caught them, and we took it all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court, and they gave up several millions of dollars. And now we're sending this out in thousands and thousands and thousands of checks. Sir?
What about these companies, like Amazon, if you have a Kindle, they'll remotely fix whatever the problem is. What about this remote fixing? Can that be?
Do you trust them?
I don't know.
Again, it depends on who's doing it. If you're really certain it's Amazon, if you're really certain it's Apple, then you're probably going to be okay. But again, I've had Microsoft do updates for me, yay, and then mess everything else up because nothing talks to anything anymore. So then you have a whole lot of other stuff. So again, it's not proof, it's no guarantee, it's pretty likely that it's going to be okay. Let me give you a short tour of our website, and then I want to take you to one more that I want you to remember. And then we'll kind of wrap up because I think I'm kind of bumping up against my time here pretty quick.
I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
everyone. A lot of people get phone surveys where they ask about different things.
I hate phone surveys.
Political, it could be environmental, and they ask you a lot of questions. Aren't those very dangerous?
She was asking about phone surveys. Are they dangerous? I don't know because I just hang up. I'm not real friendly on the phone when it comes to things like that. A phone for me, and I've taken some heat from this from certain quarters, a phone for me is not something to run for when it rings, and I never got that. A phone is not for your convenience, it's for my convenience. And so if it's not somebody, if I happen to be not busy, and I happen to be near the phone and I'm inclined to go, hello, if it's not somebody I want to talk to, I'm not even impolite. I just drop the phone. You don't need to talk to these people. They're counting on us being really nice, whether they're legitimate or not, whatever legitimate might mean. My definition might be different than yours. But you don't need to talk to anybody on the phone if you don't want to.
Well, all of us have done surveys.
Well, all of us have done surveys. I'm not polite at the door either.
Some of them are dangerous.
Yeah, well, you don't really know who it is you're getting the survey from. They might tell you they're calling from the hospital association or the this party or the that party or whatever. But and Chief Bedford and I were talking about this earlier, you really don't know who it is on the phone. You really do not know. Even with caller ID. And you think it's from Florida, don't you? It's not, probably. Caller ID is only as reliable as the signal it's given. So there's spoofed phone numbers. Anybody read anything about spoofed phone numbers? They're fake. They're spoofing you. It might look like it's coming from Florida. It might even look like it's coming from Iowa City, but it's probably really not if it's a scammer. The other part of this, hold that thought. The other part of this is that might be a real phone number, but it's what we generally know as a burner phone, a throwaway phone. You see all those prepaid phones at the big box? So the bad guys buy them by the box, activate them, use them up, throw them out. Activate them, use them up, throw them out. Activate them, use them up, throw them out. Until they're out, and then they go get some more. Worse, they might talk you into doing it because they want a business opportunity that you found on Craigslist. Say, would you go to Walmart and buy 100 phones? We'll send you a check and then ship them to us. Well, what's wrong with that check? You just shipped 100 phones off to the bad guys, and they gave you a bad check. And now, depending on the law enforcement agency you talk to, you may or may not be part of the conspiracy. Now, you're unknowing, and they'll sort that out. They'll figure out you really didn't know what was going on here. But you've just become what's generally known as a mule. Who's heard of a drug mule, right? Well, there are money mules. These Craigslist scams, you never send the money directly to these 5 gangs in Nigeria. That's not what you read about. You read about the money being sent to someone in Texas or Florida or Massachusetts or maybe 2 or 3 places. Well, that's because either knowingly or unknowingly, the recipients that are picking that money up are taking a little tiny percentage of it because they're in business, and then they're rewiring the money to someone else. And that may be 1 jump, 2 jumps, 3 jumps, ultimately goes in the pocket of the scammer in Africa, Eastern Europe, Asia, wherever it might be. So you really don't know what that caller ID is. I've talked to people who've had their own number come up on caller ID. I've talked to people who've had their neighbors come up on caller ID. Sometimes I've had people call me and talk to me about phone numbers they've had in their Yahoo or Gmail contacts that got harvested when they clicked on that email, and that's one of the many things they harvested out. So you really can't trust the caller ID. It's not a certainty. Again, ma'am?
I wonder, how are those different phone numbers actually put into the system in a way that they'll actually come? I guess I'm not clear on what the mechanism is by which they're using these numbers that aren't actually the numbers from which the calls originate.
She's asking how do the numbers get generated? Yeah, computers make our lives so much easier. That's it. That's all it is to it. Computers, because they've got a little bit of software. We can all buy this software. It's completely legal to spoof a phone number. Federal Trade Commission has it on their website, and it'll tell you about this. It's legal to spoof your website. It's the purpose for which you spoof that is illegal. And correct me if I'm wrong, it used to be in Iowa that it was illegal to light fireworks, but not to hold them. I don't know if that's still the case. But you could hold them, but you couldn't light them off. Anyway. So there's some logic leaps that need to be made here. But it's completely legal to spoof a phone number, and there are legitimate reasons for spoofing a number. Think about the abused spouse that needs to be contacting people. That person needs to be safe behind some sort of wall. There's all kinds of real good, honest reasons to spoof a phone number. It's the purpose for which is the problem. So I've taken to the Federal Trade Commission. This is our website, and come back to this sometime next year because it's a lot prettier. This is really 20th century, and we're in the middle of doing a much more friendly one. And we're hoping to put a lot more information up on it. So cruise this one to get a sense of it. But I'd like you to go back to our website come January, February. And we've got a really long one, iowaattorneygeneral.gov. iowaattorneygeneral.gov. So we're on the main page. You see where the cursor's at. It's just above Protecting Consumer, and you see the drop down. I'm going to take you to a couple of things just to give you a flavor of it. So you saw me take you through to consumer advisories and then down to telephone consumer advisories. This is a little cramped. It's a little hard to see from here. That's one of the things we're going to pretty up. But almost every topic is available on this. You can see some of this is topical and some of it is perennial. So we have charitable giving, for example. Let's look at that one. So this is our general format of an advisory. We sort of do a little introductory and then we do bullet points, the things that you really need to remember about this particular aspect, charitable giving. You get a lot of charitable calls, especially this time of year when we're all supposed to be more human than we are the rest of the time of the year. What is it about Christmas? So it's okay to be snarly in April, but not at Christmas time. But they take advantage of that, right? So we're all a soft touch for charitable giving. So you're going to get a ton of calls. Anybody getting calls this time of year for this? Most of us, some of us. So it's okay to say no here too if you don't know who they are. And again, this is one of those things where we say give local, buy local, give local. So if you've got, my mom was part of the Mercy Guild, Mercy Hospital Foundation for decades. If you have something like Mercy Guild, or if you have something like a hospice, or your church, or Red Cross, something that's local, you know, if you really want to give local, because again, who's on the phone? We really don't know who's on the phone, do we? Ask them to send you material. Are they going to send you material if they're for real? What you think? Are they going to send you material if they're not for real? So if it's somebody you wanted to consider, ask them to send you some material. And then they'll haw and they'll hem and they'll hem and they'll haw, and then they're a scammer. Or maybe they're a good scammer and they'll send you something. But that gives you something to look at while you're drinking your coffee or having your afternoon tea or whatnot. You can do some research. Hold that thought. There's another one I want you to see because I get lots and lots and lots of calls about it. So I went back to the Protecting Consumers tab, and you'll see under Consumer Tips and Information, Lemon Law. Who's bought a lemon or thought they bought a lemon? Yeah? How'd it work out? No, it's difficult. And we get a lot of calls from folks about lemon law in Iowa. When they buy a new vehicle and they're having trouble with it, the dealer can't sort it out, the manufacturer is less than helpful. So here's a lever. So I would like you to spend some time on our website as well, cruising the Protecting Consumers. There's lots of good information there. It's sort of the digital shorthand of this. So I would use that in concert with the Federal Trade Commission at ftc.gov, our website, iowaattorneygeneral.gov, and do read this book. And there are plenty of other sources out there. And I want to take you to one reporting website that I think you're going to want to hold on to because it's becoming the one-stop shop, essentially, for reporting any kind of electronic scam. It's a website operated by the FBI and the National White Collar Crime Center. And let me plug it in here. Helps if I can spell, but this is it. IC3, the Internet Crime Complaints Center. That's where you get the 3 C's. It's operated by the FBI and the National White Collar Crime Center. And it's becoming one of those one-stop shop places to report any sort of fraud online. And the reason why we direct a lot of people to this is because information is being fed in from all over the country by all of us. citizen and law enforcement alike. And the criminal analysts on the other end of this pipeline, are trying to build the patterns out, find out where the bad guys look like they might be, and then get that information to the law enforcement agencies that might be able to make some use of it. Most state agencies, law enforcement regulatory agencies belong. More and more police departments belong, and we all get regular reports. I'm the contact at the Attorney General's office, and if I just did this alone all day, I'd be busy about 27 hours a day sorting through this, but it's available. And the reason why this is important, for instance, one of these scams, the telephone scams, doesn't matter which one, but one of these a few years ago wound up being investigated all the way to the end, and they wound up, I think it was 7 people were indicted out of Canada. 4 of them were in British Columbia, I believe. But it took 4 years, 100 law enforcement agencies, and 250 agents to find those 7 people. So when you want to know, well, can't something be done? Yeah, it could be done, but that's the sort of scale we're talking about here. An illustration to help you get why we have so much trouble with this. Y'all drove here. Most of us drove here. We all stopped at a red light. When your light turned green, did someone blow through the red light? Did you see that? Was there a cop there? Not enough of us. I don't care whether it's the local police department or the FBI or the Interpol, which is the International Police Department. There's never going to be enough of us. The FBI can't take a case on unless there's something north of $400,000 involved now, because they don't have the peeps. They don't have them. A lot of police departments don't have the resources. Our department doesn't have the resources. There's 7 investigators in my division, me being one of them. One of my bailiwicks is car repair and car finance fraud. How many cars do you think are sold in Iowa or repaired in Iowa on a daily basis? Yeah, not enough of us. So we're really busy. On the other hand, we always want the report. Always want the report. Coralville PD always wants the report. Johnson County Sheriff always wants the report. We always want the report, even if we can't do something with it. We're going to say, yes, we want the information. We'll try to get it to the right agencies. His department might call me. I might call him. In fact, I have called his department for help once in a while over the years, and vice versa. Law enforcement talks to each other, so we're trading information. We always want it. So even if you're told, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do because it's beyond us, say, I understand that. I just want the report on file. I want the information in the system. If it's in there, it can get used. If it's not there, it's never going to get used. Always report it. We've got 2 kind of guidelines investigators are looking at to determine whether we need it or not. When someone asks me, well, what do you need? What do you want in a report? And I say, I want everything. Well, what do you mean everything? Excuse me. Well, I mean everything because as from an investigator's perspective, you don't know what's important until it is, and it's all important until it isn't. So we don't know what's out there until we get it. And I've got stuff sitting in files that have been kind of percolating for years, and something will come around over here and I can dovetail it. So always report it. So remember the Federal Trade Commission. Please go out there and read some of their information. Remember our website, Iowa Attorney General's Office. Please go out and read our information there. And feel free, if you get a scam phone call or anything like that, go to ic3.gov and make the report. We're going to get the information. It will be useful. I'm going to hang around a little bit after this. If anyone has some thoughts or questions, happy to entertain them. But I think I'm about wrapped up here. And I appreciate everyone's involvement here. This is fun. I like to get feedback, and I like the fact that we're able to interact. Thank you all. Thank you.
I told him it had to bend because I was shorter. Very interesting, Steve. I think you learned a lot, right? One of the things he did not cover in the short period of time he had is a new law that we have governing I have to look it up, Uniform Power of Attorney law. Just was passed this last year. So if you're thinking about having someone take over your financial affairs, be sure that you contact the state government, because they do have a form to fill out to protect you. Thousands of dollars. I know one gentleman lost $10,000 and ended up in poverty because a relative of his absconded with his money. So make sure, if you have a financial advisor, that you're covered by this law and that you fill out the correct forms. We have another gentleman, another local gentleman, Chief Barry Bedford, with the Coralville Police Department. He's been with the department since 1973, and he's been chief since 1988. He does an excellent job. He's going to bring a little local view to you. So stand up for a minute and stretch while he's coming up to the podium. If you're like me, you get cramped.
Okay, while you're filling up with coffee and getting anything else to drink, I'm gonna start here because I know we're limited on time and I just have a few minutes. But I do want to go over a couple things, and let me tell you what I kind of want to go over, and I also will stick around afterwards and be available for any questions. Number one, I'm going to talk about some of the local scams that we've seen around here recently, probably within the last 6 months even. Pretty much everything Steve said and the types of scams he mentioned, we've experienced one way or the other. But I just wanted to address some of the ones that are very current right now or have been recently heard about here in Coralville, Iowa City, Johnson County, because that's where we all are, obviously. The other thing I want to do is hit again one last time on how important it is to report it and how to report it, and touch base, reinforce again what Steve said about the FTC website and IC3 and the Attorney General's website. Some of those are important to you because of prevention, not proofing, but prevention. And the other thing is just getting your stuff together so you know how to best report it and how to document that reporting. So those are two things I want to do in about 12 minutes. So we're going to move along here, but one of the things that I found out here that hopefully you have, if you don't have, make sure you get, is this AARP Watchdog Alert Handbook. And they're out on the table here, so make sure you pick it up. And I marked several things in here. These are 13 different ways that con artists steal your money. And several of these things have been here in Coralville, Iowa City, Johnson County in the last 6 months, let's say. And I'm just going to touch base on them. I'm not going to describe them all because they're described in here, but I want you to realize that they're happening. Phishing, spelled with a P, H. That's where a website, somebody will call and say, hey, we want to verify, you get an email, and we want to verify that your account is up to date. So log on and give us your passwords and update all this stuff. And if you don't know the source, and you're not 100%, just like Steve said, it could be a scam where they've got your password and everything else. So be careful. They're phishing for your personal information. We've heard the investment fraud things around here. The gold coin scams. You hear this all the time, and people will come to us and say, "Gee, I heard this advertisement about precious metals, and I wanted to, get my money in different pots or whatever, and so I sent them off some money, and gee, I never got any gold. I never got any silver. Or worse yet, I got it, but I found out later that I could have gone down the street and bought it for a lot less." Well, if you agreed to pay that price, and you paid them that price, then that becomes a civil matter. It's not necessarily a criminal matter. And so we got to be careful of that. Steve said something best: shop locally if you can. try and get that type of thing, because you know who's you're dealing with, and you're getting a product. You can see that product before you start. The Nigerian letter he mentioned a few minutes ago, that's been going around for 30 years. And I bet I get one of those on my police department account, at least one every day. You know, and it's a variation. It's no longer the dear sir, you know, I need this and that. It's dearly beloved, or something like that. And I am the widow of so-and-so who was the vice minister of such and such a country, and he passed away and has left me several $1 billion or millions or hundreds of thousands, and I need to invest it. And if you'll help me out, I will pay you blah, 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 blah. You know, I can't remember who was talking to me earlier. I do remember, but I can't remember the name. And she said, well, you know, well, actually, it's Betty. You mentioned, I'm sorry, clicking around here a minute. But she says, well, I went to report something to the police department, not ours, and they said, they almost laughed at me and said, well, there's nothing we can do. Well, I have to admit, that was the one I thought of, because the Nigerian letter scam has been around for 30 years at least, and it's the same basic thing. This great opportunity to get lots of money. You know, and it appeals to our little bit of larceny in our own hearts and our greed, because we're thinking, gee, if I can make hundreds of thousands of dollars or whatever, then, you know, why not? Well, it is too good to be true, and it just doesn't happen. And when you come to report that, you know, you might get an officer say, there's nothing we can do, so I'm sorry. But as Steve says, ask that it at least be documented. And if you got a copy of that letter, then bring that in also. But as he mentioned, you can also send that off and to the Federal Trade Commission and make sure that they're aware of that scam, because it can help. Let me get through this and I'll get back to your question, okay? Because otherwise I will wander. Free lunch is described in here. Free lunch or dinner. Now we all get these. I get these all the time. They're not necessarily scams. I want to point that out. They're not necessarily scams. If they're a local company, and again, they have a business here, and they're in business, and they're reputable investment counselors, that's a decision you have to make. I've just invited one for tonight, and that's happening all the time. But there are a lot of them that they're from outside the state, and you don't have any way of checking them out. So again, buyer beware. And if you're going to go to this and you think you're going to get a free dinner out of the deal, well, you might, but they're going to put a hard sale pressure on you to sign up for something right then. And right there, I would suggest that you consider that very cautiously. I know people who've gotten hooked on oil and gas scams, not recently, but you know, we just found a whole oil field down in southern Illinois, you know, and you can invest it, you know, that whole thing, and that's not too long ago. Fake checks. I sold a truck on Craigslist here a couple weeks ago, and I got 4 or 5 offers to buy my truck at my posted price, and then they said they'd be sending a certified check, and that's exactly what this is, because it takes about 3 weeks for those checks to come back, especially if they're international checks, to come back through and the banks figure out that they're not good. In the meantime, when you deposit it today, the bank will actually give you the credit and you think it's in your account. But 3 weeks later, when it comes back to them as fraudulent, they take it out of your account. So, and in the meantime, you've sent back the shipping costs or whatever it is, the excess. That does happen, and that, like I said, just happened to me. We talked about tech support scans, charity telephone calls he talked about. Those are very common this time of year. Just got one yesterday at my house. Never, ever, ever give out, this is my suggestion, give out a personal financial information to anybody you don't really know, and that over the phone, even if you think that they're representing a company that you trust. If they're a bank or government or IRS, they have that information. They don't have to ask you for it, and they will not ask you for it. If you are being called by, say, a like you said, the party or a charity that you believe in, or maybe a disaster relief, and they say, we really need your money, say, send me the information, because if you give your credit card information out over the phone, they can use that. There's no guarantee they're going to do that $25 donation you said. That person could take it themselves and use that multiple times, or actually they sell it on the internet. Then that whole thing, I never ever will do any telephone gifting unless it's, like he said, local. Travel scams, you guys mentioned that. You can have this great cruise and hotel vacation experience for $65, and all you got to do is pay the reservation fee, and pretty soon, but they give it to you. Of course, it's an over-the-phone credit card is what they want. Grandparent scam, he talked about significantly. The foreign lottery scam, all these things in Johnson County, Coralville, Iowa City in the last few months, and probably many of the other things in the book and all. And I just point that out to say that it's real, and even though each one of you here has had experience on some of these things, it's not just you, it's everyone is being exposed to it. And as we're talking, what's this book say? 300 and how many? 377 ways to help yourself. What's the 300? As Steve says, 378th one that'll get you. And there's more than 378 out there. So now you had a question or comment.
Can you not notify in the paper or something that there's a scam going on? And that would save you people calling you and telling you?
Well, first of all, we don't always know the scam's going on until someone tells us. So if someone comes and tells us, yeah, we can say it's a scam going on. You realize that we don't get to tell the press what to put in. We can tell the press what's going on, and they choose what to put in the paper. Number one, the Nigerian letter is going around and has been going around forever. They don't print that because, to be quite honest, if it's 30 years old news, and they don't print it. We will oftentimes tell them that this particular scam is going, and they will do that. They'll put a little article in the paper saying Coralville Police have reported that there is the IRS phone call or IRS letters or whatever, not letters, but phone calls or scam going on. But that's all you see. And I'm not saying that they're not trying to do their job, but they're also, they're looking at what's important and how relevant is it. And is it newsworthy? And newsworthy means is it current? So not trying to defend them, not trying to castigate them, but we can't just place something in the paper unless we want to pay for the advertising. Yeah.
On those contests and sweepstakes and so on, would they ever call you up and send you an email, or would they always send a letter? Do you know about that?
I'm not sure. What do you mean?
Well, like if you entered a sweepstakes in a magazine and you won, would they?
Well, some of those I've seen. I don't enter them anymore, but when I was a younger person, I did. Publishers Clearinghouse and those. But but a lot of times they do ask for your email, so potentially they could. But I'd be very skeptical of anything where you give your email, give any personal information. Yeah, ma'am.
What about electronic pickpocketing that's going on, whereas people can buy devices online
Right.
and kind of sit near you or something, and just your cards are all in your wallet, wherever it is,
Mhm.
and they just go right off. You don't even know what's going on.
Right. Yeah, that's been around actually for quite a few years, where they can actually get a portable scanner and they can actually scan the credit cards. The bar strips on the back of your credit card are all magnetic. You've got a tremendous amount of information on the back of that magnetic strip on the back of your credit card. Steve was telling me earlier that a lot of the credit card companies are moving to the chips, which are much more secure. And I just got a new one in the mail the other day. The card company that I was with is actually changing those, and they actually have the embedded chips, which are much more secure. Europe uses embedded chips almost exclusively, and that does help the technology there. But I'll tell you one thing that I'm getting short on time here, but when I go to a hotel or motel and check in, they give you one of these cards to get in and out. You know, when they put you into that room and they scan it, all of your information oftentimes is on that strip. It not only unlocks your door, it has your name and your registration when you're checking in and out, because that way it tells the card when it can and can't be used, and it also has your credit card company or credit card information on there. Now, theoretically, that's not every one of them, but oftentimes they do. So what I do is I happen to have with my cell phone carrier, I have a little magnet here, and so I always rub that strip up against the magnet several times, and before I leave, and then I try it in the door and it doesn't work, I know that at least that information has been hurt. But that's the trouble with magnetic coding. And so that goes to the same question you had, is that people can buy those scanners. Let me say one other thing on credit cards, and then I want to talk about reporting. And I will be around to talk afterwards also. And that is that credit cards, we all use them, and debit cards. And we go to a restaurant, and they give you this nice check, and usually higher than you expected, but anyway, you give them the credit card, and they come back, and this is a nice person, and you want to give her or him a big tip because they've been so pleasant, but they go around the corner to the register to swipe your card, right? Well, how many times do they swipe your card, do you know? And you know that there's possible, you want to talk about things you can buy. You can buy a hand scanner, which is small enough to fit in your hand, and they can go in there and they can swipe it on the register for the company, and then and do the transaction. And then they can swipe it one time in that little hand scanner they got in their hand, and all that information's kept. They can put it, download it into the computer, sell it to somebody in Chicago or New York or whatever for $1 per number. They turn around, sell it to people who will hold it sometimes for several months, that information for several months before they turn around and sell it or use it. And then pretty soon you're going to end up having a whole bunch of credits, or not credits, but debits on your account that you say, where did it come from? And you can't even hardly track it back. And so those are some things that can happen. So it's hard because businesses don't always have those cash registers in place, but you know, again, it's where you trust and how you use that. Yeah, in the back.
I have a question for you and the speaker before, and it has to do with being concerned with what's going on around you. I contacted a financial institution that I've been dealing for the last 10 years or so, and when I called them, this is the first time that they asked me for my social security number. I was reluctant, but then they said, if you don't want to tell us, you can punch it in, which I did. So my concern is, well, everything turned out okay, but my concern is there a chance that someone else can intercept the phone transmission and capture the numbers?
Well, there's always that possibility. I mean, if you're using a cell phone or a wireless phone at home, that theoretically people could intercept that. Now, the probability is very low. As he mentioned, if there's millions of people using phones and cell phones, is that someone's going to be tapping into that particular line. But see, a financial institution should never, ever have to ask you for your Social Security number, or bank account number, or anything else. They know that. There's other security questions usually in place. Unless you really know who you're talking to, I'd be very suspect on that. Let me couple other things, and Betty's going to be up here bugging me. So let me do one other thing here about how to report and some things you do. If you believe that you have been a victim of a scam or fraud, let me touch you on this. First of all, IC3 is a good place to go. Steve took you there. Prepare yourself by going to the website of the Attorney General's office about different scams and the alerts going on. That's a good idea of educating yourself and knowing what's going on. But the last thing that's important to us and helps us a lot is if you go to the FTC website, and if you go under the consumer, consumer section, and he took you there already, but go to the consumer section, and it talks about the immediate steps to repair your identity theft. So if someone uses, and in this case we're talking about identity theft as to using your credit cards or your account numbers or something like that, or even if your identity really has been compromised and someone has really stolen your full identity. You go there, and there's 3 steps they have you go through, and I'll just take it. You place an initial fraud alert. Now, and this website actually walks you through this, but we place a fraud alert. If you call any of the 3 credit card, credit reporting companies, you know, you have Experian, and you've got a couple of the others, TransUnion and Equifax. All you have to do is call one, and the phone numbers are right on that website. You call them initially, and you say, I believe I'm a victim of identity theft or fraud. My credit card's been stolen or it's missing or whatever. You call them, and they will contact the other 2. That puts a fraud alert on the account. So then whenever that account is being used, they'll contact you back, and they'll say, is this legit? And all. It's good for 90 days. And what you want to do is mark on your calendar when that 90 days is up and renew it another 90 days. Because if someone gets bounced on that, in other words, they go to use it and you say no, they still have your card. And they might just hold off for 90 days or a little bit longer to see if they can use it again, thinking that it's going to be okay. Because oftentimes, if you don't have a loss and you don't actually change the number, they'll actually try and use the same number again. So that's one thing to do. Then you order a credit report. You're entitled to a free credit report if you think you're a victim of credit card theft or whatever. Order that. Go through it. Make sure that all the accounts that you have open on there are actual accounts that you've actually opened yourself. Because if they have taken your identity, they could have gotten that information. Use your Social Security number, your date of birth. It's really all they need. And then they apply for credit cards in your name, Social Security, and date of birth with a different address, and they're running up a bill, but it's going all the way back to you. And it takes for a long, long time to get that cleared up. I think you were telling me over beforehand about 18 months sometimes to get that all cleared up. So you get that credit report and you check it to be sure that everything is good. And you know that there's nothing on there that you didn't open, because you might find out, well, gee, I never opened an account at Sears. When did this? And this just happened a couple weeks ago. Well, then you let the Experian or whoever knows that you got this and said, this is not right. And we want to, this is and they'll flag that. The last thing there's what's called an identity theft report. And again, it's on that website, and they ask you to fill it out. Now, there's a whole drop-down menu of exactly what your problem was. I lost my credit card, and I'm afraid someone might use it. Or someone has used my credit card. Or I've had these other issues happen. I've got accounts been opened in my name. And it'll get more specific, but you fill out this report, you send it to the FTC, but you also copy that report, and then you bring that to your local police department. That helps us tremendously, because then we got as much information as possible that you have. Then we take your report, we have it. I'm going to be quite honest with you. We mentioned already, if they're over in Nigeria, there's not going to be virtually anything we can do. But if it's somebody local who got hold of your report, of your credit card, and they went out to Target and they used it, then we can go out to Target and we can look at video for that date and time and that transaction, and we might be able to get video footage of who used it. So if we have local links and suspects, we're going to follow it up. But generally, I'll be quite honest with you, with identity theft, a lot of this is people steal the basic information from you, your name, your date of birth, your Social Security number. They get credit card or bank account numbers. They sell them to somebody else a ways away, and oftentimes multiple times, as Steve mentioned. And then, once it gets over to Europe or Asia or Africa or wherever, or Florida, it's not always outside the United States, somebody, and they sometimes will hold these cards for a long time because it gives you a sense of security, and then they start punching everything they can in on buying stuff. They'll drop ship them to fake addresses or these places where you can rent post office boxes, and they have them delivered, and it's literally almost impossible to run down. So the chances of us doing anything with it concrete, getting your money back, getting all that done, is not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for documentation, trying to get a pattern where we can actually get the larger groups. And then some of the other thing is that Visa is pretty good about helping to restore your account money that's lost. And I know I've used in the past, I'm not sure, but MasterCard has a virtual credit card number. If you're doing online purchases, you can actually go to your account, create a virtual credit card number. It's only good for that purchase or that retailer, and that protects your real account number. Okay, ma'am?
I got two things. One thing that none of you guys have mentioned, that I use a lot is the Better Business Bureau.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna, donate money, or if I'm interested in some kind of, something online, I will look them up in the Better Business Bureau, see what kind of rating they have.
Right.
And, that Better Business Bureau is pretty valid.
Yes, yes. I mean, they can be a good resource. But, a lot of it still is the fact that you have to decide who you trust.
And then another thing that I found is when I was a victim of fraud, like $500, I went to my credit card company. Okay, another time, my Discover card called me, and they said, somebody, you're here in Illinois or Iowa, and somebody in Florida is just buying stuff with your card.
Mm-hmm.
Are you in Florida? And I said, no. And they said they would take care of it. Would I have to do anything more?
No, well, not on that particular thing. I mean, as far as getting the transaction stopped, you don't have to do anything else.
Well, they just, they changed my number. They said, don't use this card again until that good, they shut it off.
I got a call. It's been probably 6 months or so ago, and they said, well, the fact that I'm talking to you probably answers my question. He says, but we just had a transaction on your card in Dubai. And I said, well, I wish I was in Dubai, but it's not me. So he canceled it before they approved it. They put a stop on it. But those are the types of things that, if you're asking if you should report those things to the police, you certainly can. I don't want to say don't report it. But that's going to be a documentation only, because we aren't going to have anything really to go on other than the fact that they called. Now, many of the credit cards companies, loss prevention, they do call. They're not asking you for any verification information, because they've got your information. They're not asking you for your credit card numbers or any of that stuff. They just say, we have some activity on your card that we think is suspicious, and therefore we want to verify it. And that's almost always legit, at least in my experience.
Were you in this location at this
Yeah.
time? No. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
Aren't there federal laws that are put in place to protect you against credit card fraud? So once it's come to light, the credit card companies are kind of on the hook for it. Because we've had our credit card probably compromised 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And we've never had to, pay any of this at all. And my understanding is that there were federal laws that protected the consumer. And I was actually curious to know what the difference would be between the debit and the credit card, whether the same protections exist.
Well, I don't know about the federal laws unless Steve does, but I will say that between debit and credit, I would ask your bank or who your issuer of the debit card is, because I know that many of them are affiliated with Visa. And my understanding is that if you have a Visa debit card, then Visa stands behind it. And as you don't have that, if you report a fraud, then they do work with you. I do know also we've heard that there are debit cards out there that are not backed by, that type of protection. And I think you should check with your local bank on who issues their debit card. Okay, this last one, and then I know, see, I knew she was going to get up here on me.
In light of what you were saying about how there's greater sophistication now with the cards being held for longer periods, with the stolen cards numbers being held before they're used, does there seem to be any thought on the part of the credit card companies about just routinely issuing new numbers for people? Because it seems like that would they wouldn't have the ability to run
But-
these things for
Yeah,
years.
yeah, I'm sure it's a monetary thing, you know. It costs them money to do that.
But it also costs them money to be paying.
Well, you know, remember when Target got compromised a year ago? It was actually November of last year. Millions of cards were compromised, and they gave you an option if you wanted a new card. But they didn't automatically send out new cards because they said, well, most people won't be affected. And if you are, we'll cover your loss. But they weren't volunteering to go out there and wholesalely replace all those. So, okay, well, I will be around and answer more questions.
We have another very exciting speaker, something that you may not be aware of. I've known about this for a while, but most people don't. It's something that we're losing a lot of money to, and that's scams on Medicare. You may not realize it. How many of you routinely, when you get a bill, a statement back from your doctor or the hospital, go over every single item? God bless you. A lot of people don't. The Senior Medicare Patrol Facilitator is Sonita Oldfield. She's been doing this for 2 years, and she's in this district. If you know anything about the Heritage Agency, she is part of the Heritage Agency, which is part of the Department of Elder Affairs. So she's going to speak on Medicare fraud. Thank you, Sonia. Nobody's as sure as I am.
Thank you, Betty. It is my pleasure to be with you this afternoon on behalf of, and I just have a couple of corrections to make because it's confusing and we all just met each other basically this morning. On behalf of Milestones Area Agency on Aging, I am actually in the Davenport office, and I'm also here on behalf of Iowa SMP, Senior Medicare Patrol. You do have fantastic area agency on aging here, and that is Heritage. We are responsible with a cooperative agreement with Heritage, Iowa SMP, and Milestones for the Senior Medicare Patrol programming in the Johnson County area. So I'm your contact for anything to do with SMP, and Heritage is your contact for anything to do with all that great senior programming that you get from the Area Agency on Aging. So with that, I feel like this is a little bit like trying to present the complete works of Shakespeare abridged. If any of you are familiar with that production, they get 2 hours, I get 15 minutes. So here we go. According to the National Council on Aging, the average senior with good health needs to spend about $381 a month to cover basic health needs. This includes Medicare premiums, supplemental coverage, co-pays, and out-of-pocket costs. And that figure increases to $511 a month for an older adult with poor health. And this is according to a Gerontology Institute study that was done in 2012, so this is fairly recent information. Another fact that I want to share is that over 45% of the more than 49 million people with Medicare are living below 200% of the federal poverty level. And that's a Kaiser Family Foundation statistic from 2012.
Say that again.
Over 45% of more than 49 million people with Medicare are living at 200% below the federal poverty level. I'm hoping this builds a stage for the statement that I'm going to make now, which is that preserving our Medicare benefits is important to maintaining health security. So with that, let's talk about Medicare fraud, errors, and abuse. Medicare fraud occurs when someone tries to deceive Medicare into paying when it should not or paying more than it should. Healthcare professionals, plans, and people who steal your personal information and use it to build drugs or healthcare services to Medicare are all committing fraud. This is actually called medical identity theft, a term that we're hearing more now, but I'm going to put on the radar for us. According to a 2013 study on medical identity theft, more than 1.8 million Americans are affected by medical identity theft. What happens is that it results in inaccuracies in patient medical records, which can be a life risk for you should you ever present to an emergency room with an issue. And if your identity had been compromised already, you may receive treatments or medications that are not appropriate for you personally. It also results in inaccurate credit accounts and financial consequences for Medicare and private health insurance companies. Officials are currently monitoring about 300,000 compromised Medicare numbers. Compromised numbers are those that have been disclosed under suspicious circumstances. For example, a scammer phones someone on Medicare claiming that a new Medicare card will be sent and convinces the beneficiary to reveal their Medicare number, which, as you all know, what is our Medicare number? Social Security, your Social Security number, yes. And we don't get new ones of those. Scammers and thieves can make about $20,000 from stolen numbers. This is according to operations officer with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, specifically the Office of Inspector General, who reported this. Scammers and thieves can make about $20,000 from stolen numbers, partly because they're sold and resold to an average of 8 criminals. So that number, as we've seen with all the other, I'm just kind of adding on to the base that you already have. These things take on a life of their own and circulate for as long as the scammers can keep them in motion. So monitoring fraud is important because people with Medicare and Medicare program as a whole lose billions of dollars each year to fraud. However, increased efforts made possible through the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare or health reform, have helped to recover a significant amount of this money. In 2013 alone, Affordable Care Act policies resulted in the recovery of $4.3 billion. In Iowa, specifically, Iowa SMP volunteers and staff have, in the first 6 months of just this past year, have fielded 20 sessions of one-on-one counseling, resulting in, as far as we know to date, 8 cases in process or referred to local authorities or appropriate authorities. We've also fielded what we call simple inquiries, where someone may or may not have a scam, but they want someone to help take a look at it. The 99 simple inquiries, and then also 66 reports of scams or questions about health insurance claims that we have helped through the SMP program. You and other Medicare beneficiaries can help reduce fraud. In the end, this will help you save money and strengthen the Medicare program. There are a few common types of Medicare fraud that occur, and this includes someone calling you and pretending to be from Social Security or Medicare and asking for your Medicare or Social Security information. You should never provide your information to anyone other than a trusted healthcare provider. By now, I hope in the morning and the time that we've spent together, that's not news. Healthcare providers may pressure you into receiving expensive health services or items that you don't need. This is another type of Medicare fraud. Also, billing Medicare for services or items that you never received. Billing your Part D prescription drug coverage for drugs that you never receive, another example of Medicare fraud. Or billing you more than you're required to pay. If you or someone you know suspect fraud, we encourage you to report it. There are a few easy ways that I'm going to share with you to protect yourself from Medicare fraud. The first is to understand your Medicare coverage and the costs so that you can know whether the services you receive are covered by Medicare and how much you should expect them to cost. A good place to start is to review the Medicare and You booklet that you get from Medicare every September. Everybody know what that looks like and have one? If for some reason you love it so much you'd like another, we have some here with us today. Or you'd like to share with someone. I have some extra copies, and they are printed specific for a state. So sometimes when we're in bi-state regions, you'll want the Iowa-specific version, and we have that with us today. This helps you identify when a Medicare health provider or plan may be doing something incorrectly. For instance, understanding what preventative services that are covered for you at little or no cost can also help you to spot whether you're being fraudulently charged for those services. They may be free or low cost, and you may be charged at a different rate. Never provide your Medicare or other personal information to anyone other than a trusted healthcare professional. You're going to hear me say that more than once. Social Security and Medicare will never call you and ask you for your information. If someone says they're from a government agency and need your information, they may be trying to get your information to commit a fraud. You should protect your Medicare and other personal information like you would protect your credit card information. Ask questions about your healthcare services or items that you feel you do not need. Remember, it's your right to receive the type of care that you deserve and need, but you also don't have to accept services that you feel are unnecessary, and it may actually be some type of a red flag for you in terms of fraud. Report pressure from your provider to receive unnecessary services that they can't explain. If you're unsure about a healthcare service or item that you're being recommended for or asked to pay for, ask questions. This can help you spot potential fraud. We also encourage you to keep a healthcare journal and write down the healthcare services and items that you receive. This can help you be able to detect fraud later. And hopefully at each of your places you have one of those. I had a set of them up here to look at, but someone want to hold their little red booklet. Yes, that's your very own copy of a personal healthcare journal, Compliments of Iowa SMP. Basically, we encourage you to use it like a checkbook register. Jot down some basic information in there about services and dates and so forth, and then reconcile that with your Medicare summary notice or your explanation of benefits when you receive that. Sometimes that can happen up to 3 months later after a visit, so this can help you keep track of those details. Which leads me to the next thing, and that is that one of the easiest ways to detect Medicare fraud is to look at the summary of claims that the Medicare or Medicare Advantage plan sends you. If you have original Medicare, your summary is called a Medicare Summary Notice. You have an MSN that you receive. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan, your summary is called an Explanation of Benefits, an EOB. You can compare the services you recorded in your healthcare journal to your summary and ensure that you recognize all the claims. Healthcare Journal can help you spot claims for services or items that you didn't receive or for which you may have been overcharged. And when you're comparing your summary to your Healthcare Journal, keep in mind that healthcare billing can be confusing. If you see a claim you're unsure about, call the plan or your healthcare provider first and ask them for more information. They may be able to explain it, or it may have been a simple mistake. Since open enrollment happens each year, it's also important to be able to detect Medicare marketing fraud. Fall open enrollment lasts from October 15th through December 7th, which is just at the end of this week, right? And that's the time of year when you're allowed to switch your Medicare coverage. Starting October 1, you may see a dramatic increase in the amount of marketing that you receive either in the mail or out and about in the community about specific plans and plan options. So knowing the ways that insurance companies and brokers are allowed to contact you can help you spot Medicare marketing fraud. Insurance companies and brokers are allowed to mail you information without getting your permission. However, they need to get your permission before they call or email or visit you with an appointment. Often, if you put your name and contact information on a list at a promotional or marketing event, this gives the plan permission to contact you. By the way, a plan cannot ask you to provide any personal information in order to attend a promotional or marketing event. Health insurance companies that can follow slightly different rules if you're already enrolled in their Part D or in their Medicare Advantage plan. In this case, your insurer may call you or mail you materials about other Medicare products it offers without first getting your permission. Note that all materials from your insurer about other health products must tell you how you can opt out of future promotional mailings. If you schedule an appointment with a broker to discuss your Medicare health or drug information, he or she is only allowed to talk to the person who has the appointment. That would most likely be you. They're not allowed to talk to other people in your building, such as a neighbor, if they just happen to be, if you happen to live in maybe a senior residence facility or an apartment building. They can't wander around and just visit people randomly. Same for if your neighbor had someone visit. Just because you're the neighbor, and even if your neighbor mentions you, that doesn't mean that you have to welcome that unsolicited visit by a broker. It's Medicare marketing fraud when an insurance company or broker contacts you in a location that's not allowed. As was previously mentioned, they can mail you information, and they can also place ads in papers, online, and on television. You may see those little kiosks kind of in the grocery store and what have you about plan information. Those are all allowed. In healthcare settings, they're only allowed to provide sales information in common areas, such as the cafeteria or conference rooms or community rooms. This does not include waiting rooms. Also, insurance companies and brokers are not allowed to give you gifts for signing up for their plan or offer benefits such as a free checkup. At marketing or sales events, the insurance company is allowed to serve light snacks and refreshments as long as it doesn't add up to a meal, unless it's an educational event where the insurance plan or broker doesn't provide plan-specific information. It's considered marketing fraud if an insurance company or broker breaks any of these rules. So here's how to report potential fraud. If you find something suspicious on your MSN or EOB, should call your plan or healthcare provider first to get an explanation. Claim summaries and medical bills can be complicated and confusing. Contact your plan or provider for additional information, and they may or may not have a satisfactory answer for you. A fraud may or may not have occurred, but we need to give them the opportunity to explain themselves to you first. For example, after an outpatient surgical procedure, you may get various bills related to that surgery. The hospital where the surgery was performed, the surgeon who performed the surgery, the anesthesiologist, the radiologist who read your x-rays. Other providers who worked on your case all submit separate claims. And in a hospital setting, providers who didn't even spend time with you, like radiologists or pathologists, submit claims that you may not recognize on your MSN or EOB. So talking to your plan and providers can help you distinguish between legitimate and problematic charges. Then if you still suspect fraud or you received an inadequate answer when you called about an item of service, you should report it. If you suspect marketing fraud or other forms of Medicare fraud, gather as much information as possible to help you make that report with confidence. No matter the form of suspected fraud, it's helpful to have details such as specific names and locations and times and services, even if you see a number of different folks in a specific medical practice, say you see the nurse practitioner and you see the doctor, please, if you can, remember to jot down that you spent 10 minutes with the nurse practitioner and 5 minutes with the doctor, and then when you see your MSN or your EOB, it doesn't say you spent 45 minutes with a specialist. And you have the information that says, that's not really quite how I remember it or documented it. Keep in mind for next year, that I mentioned this a little bit, but keep it in mind for next year, please, that insurance companies are allowed to start marketing their new plans on October 1 of the current year. So because you're allowed to switch your plan during open enrollment, any change made during this time becomes effective of January 1 of the next year. So right now in 2014, when open enrollment closes December 7, those plan changes take place January 1, 2015. Next October 1 will be the first kind of open season on marketing any plans and opportunities to you from those insurance companies and brokers. So you may want to keep that in mind. It's considered fraud if the insurance company starts to market those new plans before October 1. So you may want to keep that in mind. We are here, Iowa SMP, to help you protect your Medicare benefits. The easiest way to do this is to check your Medicare summary notice or your EOB for errors. Report fraud and abuse to Iowa SMP at, and here's a phone number for you. It's also on the materials that I've put in front of you at your table. 800-423-2449 is the statewide number. We encourage you to get organized. There's a file folder at your place as well that has a kind of a summary of everything that I've said: protect your personal identity, detect any errors, and report fraud and abuse, and call your provider first. All of that information is on that manila file folder, which you can conveniently use to stash all those Medicare summary notices and EOBs in. And then come find us again in about a year and we'll give you a new one so that you can have that for each year, having all of your information in one place. Finally, we ask that you pass it on. SMP is a network of volunteers who are available to speak to your group. If you would like to volunteer with SMP, I've got Betty over here on my radar. Please contact me. You can help fight healthcare fraud, errors, and abuse. And it can take as little as 15 minutes once a month by visiting a meal site for seniors and sharing the latest frauds and scams and alerts. Training is provided. Call me to arrange an interview and personally discuss the SMP application and screening process. So the bottom line that I have to share and leave with you is that when it comes to Medicare fraud and medical identity theft, you may be a target, but you don't have to be a victim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our final speaker is a good friend of mine. It's Connie Eastman, who's the Community Director for the state AARP. And she's going to talk about the AARP Fraud Network, right?
Great, yep. Thanks, Betty. Thank you so much. But before we leave the Senior Medicare Patrol, I have to ask Sonita to tell us one of their great stories that I just think is so moving. We've heard the story of one person who checked their Medicare statement and found that they were charged twice for a flu shot. And at that time, they reported it to SMP, and they, thank you for your help with that. And they, at that time, reported this, and what happened is that other people were also charged. It was a coding error, so there was just a lot of people who had 2 flu shots charged to their Medicare statement, and at the end, they had saved Medicare over $1 million just by reporting this. So you're looking at your bills really can make a huge difference. So thank you all for that. That was huge. But today we've heard a lot already about identity theft, Medicare fraud, and many other scams that really rob so many of our friends and neighbors and millions of Americans of their hard-earned money. Con artists really don't care how hard we work for our money. And last year, 13 million people were victims of identity theft alone. And that's one person every 2 seconds. And that's really way too many. And because of this, AARP has developed the Fraud Watch Network. And it's our hope today that you guys can get engaged in our Fraud Watch Network and join us online. It's a free service, and it's available to everyone, whether you're a member or not. And one of the first resources that the Fraud Watch program developed was this handy playbook here. It's the Con Artist Playbook. The program looked at interviews of con artists themselves, and they talked to victims of scams, and they looked at these. They got hundreds of tapes and they did hours of interviews. And they thanked law enforcement personnel who shared all of their good undercover work with them. And what they developed were just these 5, common strategies that con artists used. And many of them have been discussed here today already, so we won't go into all the details of these. But it's really a handy tool. And one thing that I'd like to point out is that you probably can't see this in the audience, but I guess it would help. There, I guess it would help if I showed you some. These are some of the videotapes that they used and of the interviews they did with con artists. And you can't tell this, but there's actually like 6 of those have Iowa on them. So it is happening here in our state, which is a sad thing to realize. But that's why we're here. We want to give you the tips and tools to help you prevent this happening to yourself. Whoops. The next resource that I wanted to mention was something Chief Bedford had actually pointed out as well. It's just this Watchdog Alert Handbook. Uh-oh, am I reading? All right. So again, this highlights many of the scams that we've talked about today and also some prevention strategies. And that's what we really want to encourage you to take a look at are the prevention strategies, things you can do to protect yourselves and your loved ones. And the first strategy on the board right here is never make a buying decision in a heightened emotional state. This was the #1 method that con artists talked about on the tapes of how they could get individuals to buy what they were selling. They would ask you questions and ask you about grandkids or about money issues or anything that might trigger an emotional response for you. And that's what they would use. That's what they would use to try get you to buy, what they were selling. The next point here is to ask more questions than you answer. And this is especially true if you're getting an email online or if someone's calling you on the phone. It's really important that you're the one asking the questions. Remember, they're calling you, so if they are asking you questions, they're doing that phishing, what Chief Bedford had talked about, and you have to protect your personal information and all those important numbers. Another prevention strategy is to read about the product before buying. In this booklet, you'll see lots of resources. If you want to give to a charity that you don't know a lot about, you can go to charitywatch.org. If you're looking at businesses, you can, go to, I heard someone talk about their Better Business Bureau here earlier today. If you're looking at a new investment, you can go to investor.gov. And these are all places. There's tons of resources out there where you can find more information if you're thinking about something and you're not quite sure about it. And let's see, another one is don't let the salesperson control you. When I read this, I'm reminded of a fraud forum we did in Minnesota. It was very similar to this fraud forum, and the Attorney General's representative was talking about those, free lunch seminars where people come and say, we'll give you free lunch, we'll talk about an investment that we have available. And at that time, this couple runs to the back of the room where I was standing, and I was like, I thought it was a medical emergency or something. I'm like, are you okay? What's happening? They're like, we're going to our bank. We have to stop a check. And we're like, what happened? And by this time, the local sheriff was there, and they were like, we were at one of these at the hotel on the highway yesterday, and we wrote a big fat check, and we have to get to the bank and stop it because they realized it was a very controlling room, and it was you must buy today, and this is a great offer, and everyone else is buying, so it was really a timely fraud forum for that couple, and we were informed that they were able to stop the check, and they did investigate the company, so we were really happy to hear that. And another just strategy that I know we use in our home is just develop a refusal script to stop unwanted interactions. I'm a lot like Steve. I can just say no thank you and hang up, or sometimes just hang up. I have no trouble doing that, but my 92-year-old mom lives with me, and she's very polite, and she is just the person these folks are targeting. They are probably really elated when they hear her voice. But we've developed a script because it's a lot easier to, do something that you've planned, before you have to have that in your mind. So she really politely just says hello, hello, hello. And we realize they think that she can't. She has great hearing, by the way. But we realize that they think that she can't hear them. So this is a perfect script for her. She really loves it. So just to give you, I have a few more just for fun, little refusal scripts that we can look at. Oh. All right, now. Gosh, technology is great until it isn't. I'm so sorry about this. But I think you guys get this idea. Oh, we have technical assistance. This is great, actually. Oh, okay. Someone plugged something in. All right. Well, but I think you guys get the picture here, and we do want to get you out of here on time. But let's see. But these are kind of funny. I just got to make sure I get the right one. So yes, I'm going to play these for you, and wow. For all that stuff. All right. Have any of you guys seen Jerry Seinfeld? He's a very good, funny guy. And that was just a clip of him asking a telemarketer for his information and his phone number so he could call him back. Very funny. So you guys might want to check that out on YouTube. It's really, but I look at this room. I don't think any of you will have trouble with your refusal scripts. I think you guys have those in the bag. So that's great. And then finally, wow, so sorry again. Last slide, so we're in luck. But the last thing I want to leave you with is, again, a reminder to join the Fraud Watch Network. And you can do this by going online to www.aarp.org/FraudWatchNetwork. And that's all one word. And the reason I'm encouraging you to go to this site is you can get a lot of the information and resources that we shared today, lots of good information on there. You can sign up to get watchdog alerts. This is where you'll get an email, a phone call, or you can even say you want it through the mail of scams, like latest scams that are happening in your community. So if you want to get it by phone or by mail rather than online, I have a phone number here I'm going to give you, and it's on the back of our brochure. It's 877-908-3360. So again, you can get these alerts so you know what's happening in your community by phone, email, or mail. And this map is actually my favorite part of our Fraud Watch Network. It's a scam tracking map. It sounds similar to kind of what the IC3 is doing and some of the other websites that we talked about today. But this map, you can click on Iowa and you can get, this lists something here from the Attorney General's office. It lists that there's a fraud fighters program that's happening in a community. I've seen things on here from local law enforcement where they want people to know about a home repair scam that's happening. So it's just a great resource, and it's constantly updated, and you can really localize it as well. So we have a scam tracking map, and most importantly, I think it's also a resource that if you are a victim of identity theft or a scam, there's trained volunteers that you can call and talk to, and they'll help you figure out your next steps. Where can you report this? Maybe some of the safeguards, that we were talking about earlier about protecting your identity. They really can spend time with you and talk you through that process. So it's a place to go for help as well. So that's the Fraud Watch Network. Please check it out. And with that, I wanted to ask Betty Kelly to come back up with me. And I hope you guys can help me in thanking Betty and all of our amazing speakers for all of their great resources. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I hope you're better informed, right? Don't let them scam you.
Good parting words.
Have a good trip home.